you ever wondered which Disney songs are actually canon? If this is a question that your brain has decided to ask at 3 in the morning, like mine did, and you couldn't find an answer to your question, that is what we are trying to discover today. Like, are the characters really canonically singing, or are we just watching a bunch of magical musical hallucinations? And why does the difference even matter? It is, in fact, that deep, and by the end of this video, you may never look at your favorite Disney songs the same way again. This is Calxiyn here to make you care. Brought to you by my patrons and my YouTube members, so you can have fun learning about music and storytelling while leaving all the grunt work to me, because oh boy, this was a lot to do. I wanted to figure out the answer to this question for 3 reasons. First, to help anyone who, like me, bolted awake at night thinking about this and couldn't find a clear answer. Second, to showcase how the choice between songs that really happen in the story, diegetic music, and those that don't happen in the story, non-diegetic music, can completely change how we experience the movie. And that the choice is a lot more important than you may think. And to discuss why a creative team may choose one over the other. And third, to explore what actually makes a movie a musical, because some people say the definition of a musical is that the characters do not know that they're singing. So does that mean that some Disney musicals aren't actually musicals at all? We're going to start from the Renaissance onwards, because in older films like Snow White or Peter Pan, 99% of the time the songs are diegetic, meaning the characters are aware that they are singing. And you can see a trend emerge because these songs were reserved for characters who were innocent or silly. When other characters did sing, it was usually some type of performance, like a parade, a work song, a sea shanty, or cultural music. And if you've seen this video, you would already know the unintended consequence of this, which is that villains like Lady Tremaine or Maleficent never got to break out into songs that reveal their true nature. Walt Disney did not want the evil queen in Snow White to have a song because it would have been a comedy song. And as we've seen, the reality where the evil queen does get a song is not a good one. But this trend changed as musical theater changed, and it changed during the Renaissance with characters like Scar and Ursula getting their own villain songs. We know that the absence of a song can be a blessing or a curse for the storytelling, and the choice between diegetic and non-diegetic is no different. It has made some of these songs a lot better, and some of them worse. So let's dive into it and see what we find. We're starting off with a movie that barely counts as a musical, Mulan. It only has 4 songs, and after the scene at the village, it pretty much stops being a musical. And in this video, I explain why I'm torn on that choice, because it feels like the creators thought that Mulan could not be serious and a musical at the same time. I mean, who would make a musical about bloodshed and war? That just sounds ridiculous! Pixar is not only responsible for Disney's musical reluctance starting with Tangled, it actually goes this far back when Pixar started to release stuff in the theaters that appealed to young boys, and Disney wanted to make sure to capitalize on that market. The reason why this is important is because with some songs I felt like they could go either way, but then I remembered what the mindset of the creative team, allegedly I guess you could say, was at that time. The songs lean towards comedy, and in the rare moments that they don't, because diegetic songs would be seen as too goofy or too immersion breaking for more serious moments in the story, Mulan and Shang sing in their heads. I did wonder if Girl We're Fighting For. Oh my gosh! Oh, you scared the crap out of me! Oh my goodness. I did wonder if Girl We're Fighting For might be an army song with a call and response style, like each man is contributing his own verse, but I think it's more believable to say that the soldiers are just joking around and talking before they see the village. Maybe a few of them are even singing, they're just not singing those exact words. So I don't think any of the songs really happen in this story's world, and based on this, Mulan would have 0 diegetic songs. On the opposite side of the spectrum is Hercules, which had me losing my mind, and I have a wild theory about it that I never thought of before. For one last hope and go the distance, I don't think that Phil or Hercules actually know that they're singing. But the Muses definitely do, right? Because this is their solution to the narrator boring us to death at the very beginning. They are here to, pun intended, jazz it up. In I Won't Say I'm in Love, I think that Meg is being compelled to sing by the Muses, but it's more dreamlike to her. Like, maybe she just doesn't have a good time to mention it, but I feel like she would mention meeting actual goddesses at some point, so I think she remembers the revelation that she had, but not the Muses themselves. So here's my theory, okay? When we watch The Little Mermaid, we presume that we are seeing Ariel's story as it actually happened, like in the Little Mermaid universe, right? Whereas in The Princess Bride, the grandpa is reading a novel, right? So here's my big theory, what if the entire movie is the Muses' version of the story, even when they're not on screen? A lot of people would say that we are flipping between the Muses to Hercules' real life as it happened in the Hercules universe, but what if everything is a performance? They wrote the songs for Hercules and Phil, and this theory explains why there's so many continuity errors in the TV show. The Muses could have been taking creative liberties to make the story more exciting, and the TV show is the real version. This is our first example of how characters being aware that they are singing can make the story more fun and give it more personality. I love the opening of Beauty and the Beast, but imagine how different Hercules would have been if they just had a song in the town for Hercules like they had done for Belle. It's a same old non-diegetic opening number. It would get boring after a while, right? The Muses are the best part of Hercules for a reason. Their unique storytelling would be impossible if they didn't know they were the storytellers. And so my vote is that all of Hercules is diegetic. Now, Tangled is an interesting case because the song that feels most like a traditional musical theater number is actually the one where the characters know that they're singing. Because of Pixar's sensibilities, Alan Menken and Glenn Slater had to change strategy. They pivoted to a more pop music influenced direction. The healing incantation is of course diegetic, and Flynn's lullaby would have been diegetic too if they didn't cut it, but a lot of the songs just happen in the characters' heads, like I See the Light and When Will My Life Begin. And I don't think Mother Gothel is doing a whole musical number. But the best song in the movie though, I've Got a Dream, is diegetic, and it's the most musical theatery too. This thug has their little scale and one character is playing an accordion, and Flynn even says, "Sorry boys, I don't sing," which wouldn't make sense if they weren't actually singing. So this one's an open and shut case, but we do learn an interesting lesson here, because remember what I said earlier, that some people say the definition of a musical is that the characters don't know that they're singing. But in this case, the only number that feels like a full-on musical theater number is the one where the characters know that they're singing. Beauty and the Beast is actually the movie that inspired me to make this video, because even though it's the most traditionally musical theater of the bunch, where many characters are unaware that they're singing, we don't talk enough about how Be Our Guest is absolutely diegetic. It was an organized performance put on by the staff to cheer Belle up and win her over. This is the moment where the magical adventure that she has always dreamed of really begins. And this scene made me realize something important for our investigation in the post-Renaissance Disney films. The diegetic songs are rarely given to human characters. In older films like Snow White, she sings to the other characters, to the wishing well, to the birds, to the prince, to the dwarves, and that's completely normal. But in the newer movies, would Anna or Tiana ever do that? It makes you wonder if we can find a new trend that now diegetic singing is only reserved for magical beings, but we'll have to keep going. I will say though that I think this logic carries over to Beauty and the Beast. They're clearly dancing to something, and Mrs. Potts even calls it a song as old as rhyme. And I know she's being like metaphorical, but be with me on this, okay? I think it's a folk song. The song is supposed to be the height of simplicity, especially lyrically, and this draws a nice contrast to the bombastic and theatrical songs like Gaston in the rest of the movie, the ones that are packed with Howard Ashman's signature clever wordplay and spectacular instrumentation from Alan Menken. But this moment is more intimate. And I wonder if it's to us. It's supposed to be a reflection of us, the common folk who have been telling this story ever since Cupid and Psyche. That's the reason why they know the song. And Mrs. Potts is not only singing this in the ballroom, but she's trying to retell this ancient story to Chip, who is trying to understand what love means throughout the movie. And I think she's retelling it in the way that we retell all fairy tales. She just does it musically, the same way that many myths were passed down. To teach Chip, yes, but also to impart on the audience what love truly is. So for Beauty and the Beast, we have one performance and one diegetic folk song. Speaking of magical characters and their diegeticness, let's look at Aladdin. One jump ahead and a whole new world are not actually happening in the world of the story. I could believe that when Aladdin goes riff-raff, street rat, he's just doing a sort of sing-song thing in the reprise, but I don't think he's actually singing otherwise. Sidebar, okay, but is my mom just weird? Or does anyone else's mom sing random sentences out loud? Like if I say, we gotta put the clothes away, she'll sing, we gotta put the clothes away, right back at me. So like maybe Aladdin is just like that. Friend Like Me though is actually happening. It's very similar to Be Our Guest, where Genie is showing off. He's using magic to put on a full show. And there's even an applause sign, which wouldn't make sense if Aladdin didn't hear anything. So just like Belle claps at the end of Be Our Guest, we can assume that Aladdin experienced this whole song. Arabian Nights is probably diegetic too, like Genie is breaking the fourth wall and talking to us. Put a pin in the fact that Genie is retelling the story of the lamp. Even if everything is being retold, I do think that Prince Ali actually happened. It's probably similar to Hail Our Princess Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, where there's a parade. You see performers who are dancing to music, so music has to be happening. But here's where it gets really interesting. Is Jafar singing in the Prince Ali reprise? He's mocking the lyrics he heard earlier in the parade. If Jafar had sung earlier in the movie, I think it would have been more debatable, but I vote yes, he is singing. This is his only musical moment, and it happens after he has the magic of the lamp. So I think that magical entity rules apply here. But like I revealed a little too soon, here's the twist. If Genie is narrating the whole story, how can we be sure that any of the songs actually happened? How can we be sure that anything is happening as it actually happened in the Aladdin universe? Maybe Prince Ali did happen, but then Genie wrote a song for Jafar to call back for it, and we're just in another Hercules situation. It's so funny, right? Because Disney movies used to open with the fairy tale book. And so on some level, there was always that meta, this is a story that is being retold. But it's funny how they snuck it into the Renaissance movies too, and I never really thought about it before until just now. You guys have to tell me what you think of these theories because it delights me. Like, it's so funny to imagine that Genie wrote in the lyrics like, still I think he's rather tasty. Like, in the version of Aladdin's life, that's out of pocket. Why would he do that? But of course the songs would have that extra Genie flair that we've come to expect from his character. So it makes sense. For Encanto, you'd think that a story full of magical people in a literal magical house would have some songs that are diegetic, but let's talk about it. I couldn't find evidence that any of them actually happened. Except for maybe this scene. Maribel isn't just being told what happened, she's seeing the past through magic. I feel like the voice of her grandfather is singing from the candle's memory and its magic. Like either he wrote the song or it's a song that was formed by his spirit, formed by the memory itself, and that makes it diegetic. The other reason why this rings true to me is because Lin-Manuel Miranda intentionally wrote it to sound like a Colombian folk song, and of course a folk song by nature would be diegetic. Even though I do really love Encanto, and I think it's one of the last times where I felt like Disney was still magical, we know that Lin had to fight against the lingering Pixar stank, which might be why so many of the songs feel like they take place in a sort of music video void disconnected from the setting instead of magic springing into the setting. I'm mostly thinking about surface pressure, but it's interesting that the most popular song of the entire movie was the one that was most musical theater-y again. I do think it's a shame, though, that they didn't lean into that more, because if there was any movie where it would have been totally believable to have all of the characters have diegetic songs, it would have been this one. They could have woven that in somehow, like maybe the grandfather spirit would have been attached to Maribel, and then that would have compelled them to sing what they would normally never say. And that doesn't mean it wasn't because of Maribel's efforts, rather that the grandfather picked her, right? Whereas the house never picked her to have a gift because he knows that Maribel is the only one who can help them. It could have been something like that. So in the end, she was chosen by someone. That she doesn't need to have a gift to be chosen by her family, and the grandfather was the first one to do it. But again, it's not that big of a deal. That's just a little rewrite idea. And this brings us to Lin-Manuel Miranda's other Disney musical, or should I say now, the MCU, the Moana Cinematic Universe. Between Moana and Moana 2, there are 26 songs, and I'll argue that the ones that are not primarily written by Lin or Barlow and Bear are diegetic. The Broadway songs clearly have cultural influence, but I think there is still an obvious split. They brought in the musical theater writers to write the musical theater numbers, and the rest of the songs are the more culturally authentic songs sung by the living people or the spirits or the ancestors. Just like in Frozen 2, where Elsa hears the spirits singing the ah and mimics it in the script, I think the spirits are really singing. I think there are still some exceptions in the Broadway songs, though. We could think of We Know the Way as an in-universe sea shanty of sorts, where the wayfarers are teaching the song to the next generation and keeping the tradition alive. And I think both of Maui's songs are supposed to be diegetic. In the first film, he refers to his mini Maui tippity-tapping, which suggests that it's tapping to the music, right? Which means Maui knows he's singing. Now, whether or not Moana hears the singing, or she just hears like really fast talking, that's unclear to me. I couldn't find any evidence about that. I want to hear what you guys think, like, let's decide together. Now, when we get to Shiny and Get Lost, if we apply what I am now calling the Genie's Law, where magical beings can apparently create music as part of their powers, and we use Maui as an example, I think it would be reasonable to presume that Tamatoa and the goddess from Moana 2 are probably magically manifesting these songs in the same way. And what I find interesting is that even though Moana has one of those classic Pixar stank style please don't start singing meta jokes, the movie otherwise treats its music with sincerity, and I feel like we have the sincerity of the music team to thank for that. To say that Disney has fumbled with accurately representing cultures in the past would be an understatement. So it's really great here that they brought in real Polynesian musicians and choirs to ground it in that cultural authenticity. And I think since music and performance is such a big part of the culture, it only makes sense to weave the Broadway story and the real mythology together. The Lion King is hilarious to me because animals singing to the audience, that's fine, but singing to each other? Apparently that would be going too far. But all hope is not lost. Let's talk about Circle of Life first. Even though it's sung by an omnipresent narrator, I think that this one is at least partially happening. Like, part of it is a spiritual hymn that all the animals know. They are gathering in community worship, and the English lyrics are not something that they're consciously singing, but something that they feel. The narrator is the one translating those feelings to us. Now, even though Simba has a very suspicious reference to a spotlight, I don't think there's enough here to say that I Just Can't Wait to Be King is actually happening. But I do think there's a better case for Hakuna Matata, because Timon literally says, "Sing it, kid!" I don't think the entire song is diegetic, but that this specific phrase is passed down through song. To talk quietly about my mom again, I wonder if it's similar to how she goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, don't forget to lock the door, 5, 6, 7, 8, hurry up or you'll be late, all while jiggling the door handle, mind you. But it could also be like the alphabet song, like something to impart knowledge onto children in an easy way that they remember. But when they start singing about Pumbaa's backstory, I think that that's just regular speech the audience is hearing as song. And the biggest clue that tells us that breaking out in a song is not normal in this world is Zazu. When he's locked up by Scar, he starts singing for entertainment with no music accompanying him. How Zazu actually knows it's a small world though, or if you've seen it on Broadway, they do let it go, that's a whole other can of worms that I don't have time for today. Princess and the Frog also has an omnipresent narrator at the beginning, but let's start with the obvious, which is Dr. Facilier. Like Genie, I do think he's conjuring music with his magic, especially since Naveen and Lawrence hear the echo, which was sung. Like, I guess they could have heard it spoken, but that would just be a little weird. But here's another one for us to decide together, because I am the embodiment of that, like, man, people be saying things so definitively, I think it depends, and I don't know. Because Naveen and Lewis are jazz musicians, it tracks that they would have the improvisational ability to jam out together. But where things get weird is with Tiana. Is she just improvising and mimicking what she heard already? Now, of course she is scolding them, but I wonder if this was supposed to foreshadow to the audience that Tiana does have, like, a fun bone in her body, so to speak, right? She can let loose, she can jam out, she just doesn't let herself usually. And this is almost an excuse to. Her lyrics feel like they could be something off the top of her head. Like, it's not like she's pulling out these crazy Genie-level lyrics and rhymes, right? It could have been improvised. But it's just hard to imagine her breaking out in a song given her personality. Can we chalk it up to her being temporarily magical since she's magically transformed as a frog and influenced by Facilier's magic, and we know that Facilier can manifest music? Let me know. When Ray sings both times, it is diegetic. With the Bayou song, it's a travel song, and with Evangeline, he is serenading her. And Mama Odie is explicitly diegetic as well. So far, it does seem like we have a new trend with the magical characters. And it really makes you think if one day any princess will sing her own song to someone like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty did. She starts by talking and then singing to her mom, but this is her internal visualization of the future. And you could say in that we almost have an opposite pattern. If magical characters bring songs into the world, human characters are blocking out the world to sing, and we are being invited into their inner world. I know that no one ever wants to talk about Pocahontas, but aside from its animation, the music is the only redeeming quality, and it's breaking the pattern in an interesting way, so let's talk about it. Virginia Company is absolutely a sea shanty. I think that Steady as a Beating Drum is also diegetic because the lyrics say, "Hear our song." It'd be kind of weird if they said that and they weren't singing. I think it's similar to We Know the Way in Moana, like they are singing to pass down their traditions and to also pass the time. And this musically gives us a very compelling contrast because they're singing about gold and money, and they're singing about wanting to keep their traditions alive and taking care of the earth and the land. I also think that Listen to Your Heart is diegetic because, as we've seen, magical beings like Grandmother Willow seem to be aware of their musical magical talents. The question is, what is happening with Pocahontas herself? For Just Around the River Bend, I think that this is in her head. But for Colors of the Wind, Pocahontas sings, "We need to sing with all the voices of the mountain." So it'd be really odd if in reality she was just saying it and not actually doing it. But here's my theory. The Willow Tree magic allows John Smith and Pocahontas to communicate with each other, and I think it's cool to think that not only is it understanding language, but that just like how a musical theater song is supposed to reflect a character's heart and soul, what John Smith and Pocahontas are actually hearing is what is in each other's heart. The obvious problems with the movie aside, I do think that that's a beautiful idea, and it would be interesting if Disney were to revisit it with something a little less problematic, like this idea that the characters cannot speak to each other, but can communicate through the universal language of music. Frozen and Frozen 2 almost made me lose my mind, but before I explain why, I just want to thank my patrons and my YouTube members for supporting me so I can make more videos like this. You can join them to get early access to these videos and to my YouTube shorts about my own original musical theater project. But if you can't do that today, it is no problem, because if you want to see more of me, you can just leave a comment and subscribe. If you've gotten this far, maybe leave an emoji for what your favorite discussion has been. Like if it's been The Lion King, put the lion emoji, and so I'll know that you actually got to almost the end of the video. But now let's solve this shit together. Okay, so All Is Found is definitely a diegetic lullaby, but where things get crazy and chaotic is when we think about that in relation to Show Yourself. Is Elsa silently walking through the cave alone with her thoughts, watching watching the memories unfold through the walls, and then only when her mother starts singing does she just suddenly burst into song? I think that is hilarious, and unfortunately, Into the Unknown does not help whatsoever. Elsa mimics the melody, not only in this song, but also in the spoken scenes. So is Elsa completely silent, only joining in for the or is she singing from the very beginning? Is she compelled by the spirit in a similar way to our Meg theory from Hercules? Or has Elsa been able to manifest music ever since Let It Go? She's not on the level of the Genie, obviously, but she does look directly into the camera at the end, and so maybe she knows she's performing. Maybe embracing her powers meant that she has that, like, a higher level of consciousness. I don't know, but for the sake of my sanity, I am going to say that Elsa has been aware that she is singing ever since Let It Go. When she pulled the gloves off and revealed her powers, she suddenly joined Mrs. Potts and the Genie and the other characters that we've talked about. Or else I'm gonna cry. Kristoff is super wacky though, because we know he doesn't have any magical powers. Reindeers are better than people from the first movie is diegetic, and Kristoff obviously has musical talent. But it begs the question, what is happening during Lost in the Woods? Kristoff starts by singing to Sven like he usually does, but then it devolves into all of this. So my verdict is that Kristoff is delusional. He imagined this song in his mind in a music video-like format. No one saw this, but it is diegetic to Kristoff. The first Frozen is much easier though. Frozen Heart is a sea shanty on ice, so that's 100% diegetic, but nothing else seems contentious until we get to Fixer Upper. I will argue that the trolls are really singing because Kristoff and Anna are not singing. Like, there's this harsh divide between the song and the speech where you'd think if it was fully sung through that Kristoff would sing she's engaged to someone else. But because they both seem so confused, I feel like they know that this is happening. But my mind still lingers on Frozen 2, you guys. Like, you have to help me make a decision here with this one, because it is bizarre how they have mixed the diegetic with the non-diegetic. Compared to how other Disney movies have handled it, it doesn't really seem like a choice in Frozen 2, it just seems like an accident. And speaking of bizarre choices, which is the cautionary tale that keeps on giving? I think this movie could have seriously benefited from more diegetic music, not only as a callback to the Golden Age films, but to serve a similar function as, say, Orpheus in Hadestown. Let me explain. Asha's father was a philosopher who believed in the stars, and the entire time I was expecting the twist to be that Magnifico killed him for finding out the truth about natural magic found in all living things, including human beings themselves, that they have the potential to make their own wishes come true versus what Magnifico uses, which I think is like man-made magic or alchemy. We know what happens to intellectuals during dictatorships, so I thought that Magnifico killed him. But they completely bungled promise, progress, and payoff. Imagine this instead. Magnifico sees Saba's singing-related wish as dangerous because Asha's father knew the song, an incantation that would call upon the stars. The only reason why Magnifico has not been worried is because when Saba's wish was taken, he forgot, so he basically thinks it died with Asha's father. But when Asha runs into the woods, she sings the lullaby her father taught her. Star coming down to Earth after Asha's vague, wishy-washy song feels contrived. It's also just annoying to me because you're telling me that, like, a little kid has never wished on a star before and was more pure of heart to deserve it, quote-unquote, compared to Asha. That no ordinary person has ever wished for something selfless. As Elle Woods would say, why now? Why this sperm? Why today? Why this song? Magnifico's kingdom was destroyed by magic, and even though we don't know where that magic came from, if there was any possibility that a normal person could do this and he knew that, he should have been a lot more worried about all the random children who didn't give up their wishes yet, that they could be granted by magical stars, undermining his authority. But my little rewrite would justify Star's presence in the narrative, and we'd also understand why Magnifico sees Asha as so dangerous, because she can wield power that no one else can, not even him. suddenly the stakes are really high when you think about how she could easily spread that knowledge to people. And then we get the full circle moment where at the end of the movie, all the townspeople sing it together. And it would actually make sense, because how can the ending song be diegetic, but not the one where she sang in the woods? They're all just suddenly singing something that they never heard. It doesn't make sense. Instead, Asha could have led them in songs similar to Orpheus. And it's not like the music manifests first and then Asha starts singing. She sings this a cappella, which implies that she knows the melody of the song to start singing it, right? Unfortunately, I'm a Star is probably diegetic, and this was an open and shut case, but I wanted to talk about the missed opportunity here. This is also why I think they should have kept the cut song a wish worth making. Imagine Asha singing to these stars, and then the people joining in at the end of the movie to affirm the thesis of what makes a wish worth making and what they're willing to sacrifice for it, how they're willing to fight for it. This would have been a nice homage to Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora, who do sing diegetically, but I also think that Asha being a musician would have given the story more warmth and sincerity. I just think that that's so funny, like that Asha breaking out in a song would actually have made her feel more real compared to what we got. But the bard Asha of my dreams will have to wait for another day. The Hunchback of Notre Dame is my favorite Disney movie of all time, and I saved it for near the end because it raises some more fascinating questions, right up there with the Muses and the Genie. But this time, it's about a non-magical character acting as the storyteller. Clopin opens the movie with a literal performance, a puppet show in the town square. He clearly knows he's singing. During Bells of Notre Dame, he says stop with a mix of his voice and the Archdeacon's voice in character, and then slips into the narration, cried the Archdeacon. It flashes between them and it's so cool. But does that mean that the entire movie is a performance that he's putting on, like a one-man musical theater workshop? That we hear Frollo and the other characters, but in reality, Clopin is singing and speaking everything. And where this is so much fun is that Clopin is not just a narrator. He is present inside of the story, at the Feast of Fools and in the Court of Miracles. Now with Topsy-Turvy, it's parade rules, right? But this means at some point, Clopin retroactively wrote an entire song about the time that he almost executed Quasimodo and Phoebus by mistake, and that's so fucking funny! So moving on from that, I feel like God Help the Outcasts is partially diegetic. It starts with a church hymn, likely something that the people in the cathedral are actually singing in worship, but I think that after that, we are hearing the internal prayers of Esmeralda and the churchgoers. Unfortunately, the gargoyles are probably singing diegetically. But I'm gonna treat this like Kristoff and say a guy like you is all in Quasimodo's head, so the rule here is delusional. This is how the stage version handles it too, like the gargoyles are a figment of his imagination and they also act out a religious play, so I think they're not real. But let's get back to Clopin. I think in the present day, he is preserving history through song so the future generations don't repeat the same mistakes, and I think that's really beautiful. Here's a fun riddle to leave with you guys though. When did Clopin find out what happened to Quasimodo's mom? Did Quasimodo tell him about it after the battle? Did word spread throughout the Romani community the day it actually happened? I suppose they would be too concerned about how Frollo brainwashed Quasimodo to try to go rescue him, but there is potential for a fun AU story here of like Clopin raising Quasimodo as a child. I just think that that's cute. But even without all that, it sounds cheesy, but this movie proves that the most powerful, magical storytellers aren't singing teapots or trees. It is the common folk, like Clopin, with something important to impart and preserve, choosing the language of music and song to do it. And now let's talk about where it all started with The Little Mermaid. We call it Disney's first true Broadway-style musical, but it actually has a lot more in common with Snow White and Cinderella than you may think. At the start of the video, I promised that we would talk about this idea that people often think that a musical requires characters to be unaware that they're singing. But right away, with The Little Mermaid, that idea falls apart. Fathoms Below is a sea shanty. Daughters of Trident is a real performance, establishing that Sebastian can write music, he can write lyrics, and he can conduct. And in both of his songs, Sebastian flexes those skills again, and the performances are acknowledged by other characters. Kiss the Girl starts because of Scuttle's atrocious singing, after all. And I'd argue that Le Passant is at least partially real. Like, I think it's a work song, especially with Chef Louis like, hee hee hee, ah. Like, he's just fooling around like any of us would hum to ourselves. The question really is, what isn't diegetic? Because Ariel is a mermaid, part of your world could be coming from her magic. And even though it's a bit more of a stretch compared to the other songs we've discussed, we do have the TV show and the prequel movie to look at. In Ariel's beginning, singing is illegal, and she starts her song by singing a cappella and then playing the piano. In the TV show, she takes music lessons with Sebastian. So not only does Ariel have mermaid magic, she also has canonical musical training. This makes her the only post-Renaissance princess who would be using that to make her own songs, similar to Kristoff and Naveen. Like, Rapunzel plays the guitar, but she's in a montage. She's not accompanying herself like Naveen and Kristoff do with their instruments. So I choose to believe that Ariel can manifest a song from her heart. And by that logic, wouldn't we have to say that Poor Unfortunate Souls is diegetic too? Even though I couldn't find any further evidence, we know that Ursula beckons Ariel to sing at the end, and that part is real, so it's at least partially diegetic. But I kinda like the idea that this is normal for merfolk, that this is part of their culture and their communication, and it would make it that much worse when Trident bans music in the kingdom. He is literally banning them from being who they are. And this creates contrast with the human world where no one is singing naturally at all. So this might be the highest ratio of diegetic songs in any Disney musical. I've said it before that I wish Eric had his own song, and part of me still feels that way. But this video made me realize that Eric not singing may have been a more intentional, powerful choice. At the end of the movie, where everyone sings part of your world, it's the first moment where humans and merfolk express their hearts and souls through song, together. If Eric had sung earlier, that moment wouldn't feel as meaningful. But because he didn't get his own I Want song in his head, the song feels like a manifestation of the unity between human and merfolk. Doing this project really deepened my perspective, but this one hits me the hardest. And it led me to this final revelation that I want to share with all of you. In order to fill the full 2 hours that a Broadway musical demands, you are forced to give everyone a song. With Eric, you can't have a leading man who doesn't sing. With Ariel, as striking as it is in the animated version for her to go completely silent, in the musical, you can't have your leading lady not sing for half of the show. But when Disney on Broadway changes these things, when they add things like this, what happens? These interesting interpretations that we've talked about throughout the entire video that strengthen the themes and the nuances that we've explored together, the ones that I think really strengthen the story in most cases, get erased in the Broadway versions. And even though I've been frustrated before when characters don't get a song, or worse, they get a song that doesn't feel sincere, there's something special about how animation, with its time constraints, forces creators to make choices. Who do we need to hear from? When do we need to hear them sing? Do we need this to be diegetic or not? It's not a matter of requirement. It's not a matter of filling out time. It is a matter of need. And this makes these choices feel more meaningful and more deliberate. So what do I think about the definition of a musical is when characters don't know that they're singing? I think it's stupid. And it's not just stupid, it's also limiting. What matters is whether it uses music in a way that only musical theater can, to transform the characters and the story, and to use music as the medium of storytelling. No one ever said that it couldn't be diegetic music. And since singing is part of the human experience, we do improvisation, we have lullabies, we have work songs, we have prayers, we sing and make up songs to ourselves while we're working, it only makes sense that diegetic songs should show up in these worlds too. Music is part of our lives, and if we use music to pour our hearts out, even when we're not even performers or professional musicians, why shouldn't they? Both diegetic and non-diegetic songs are valid ways for the characters to do that. They clearly have their own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to telling a compelling story. If you're a songwriter, you just need to know when to use them. Or maybe you don't know and you find out along the way. But I encourage you to at least think about trying it. But if you do want to hear about which Disney characters I think should have definitely gotten their own song, check out this video. Or if you want to hear about the production shit show that I mentioned earlier with Tangled, Encanto, Wish, and Moana 2, I cover that in this video instead. This has been Calxiyn caring way too much and extra too much this week, I think, and I hope now you care too.